22nd episode of the 5D Warrior Podcast. Today we're getting into aliens, UFOs, extraterrestrial life, distractions in our media.
Yeah, distractions and how those things can be used to keep you away from waking up to the alien in here. And when I say that, I mean the oneness consciousness that resides within and that we must tap into in order to see through the veil, open the third eye and see through the veil of these distractions. Like, for example, we're bringing you the 5D news. They've been talking about like UFOs in Congress and stuff, and like basically that's like a national security threat. And like, well, how are they supposed to manage UFO, like extraterrestrials, this and that? But like they're talking about this and it's not even on it's barely on the news, and all you see is Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, and yada yada, just BS. When they're talking about friggin' extraterrestrials, and we'd rather talk about Johnny Depp.
And they're talking about
it makes no sense.
They're saying in Congress, I'm not sure exactly who said it, but they're saying the universe is infinitely large to our knowledge currently.
They said that on Congress.
They said that in Congress, that the universe is infinitely large. How are we supposed to say that we're the most intelligent life in the galaxy? Like, it's very unlikely.
That's a fact.
They're saying that that's a matter of fact, Jack.
That's a 5D fact.
That's a 5D fact. Think about the Milky Way galaxy and the billions of other galaxies. And you're going to tell me there's no aliens, right? Now, we think of aliens as separate from ourselves. We're talking about extraterrestrials is a better word. Demi Lovato said she said aliens is something
negative,
racist. I think she said it's racist.
It is though, in a sense, because like they are just us from another world, right? And if we talk about oneness, that would mean that they're a reflection of ourselves. They're just another manifestation on a different world, different reality of existence than we are. So like by calling them aliens, we're just like automatically like just like passing judgment on them essentially. And like in reality, if they're already here, and if they really want to do something to us, it would have happened thousands of years ago. Who knows? It might have happened. I think it did. But, you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
Like, if they really were here to ruin our society or, like, kill us off or whatever, it would already be happening. That's not to say they're not infiltrated in this reality, slowly over time lowering our vibrations.
Or not even just them lowering our vibrations, because I would say that is probably a violation of our free will, but urging mankind itself to lower vibrations. Because think about what's happening on our planet, and it's not any extraterrestrials doing this manipulation of people. They're manipulating people into manipulating people. We're humans.
Yeah. And they're taking us, and they're writing the scripts, and we're still buying into it every day. Like they set us up to make these unconscious decisions, and we like making these unconscious decisions because most of the time it's the easiest thing to do, and we don't have to, like the freaking Liver King, right? Like, you don't suffer for anything anymore. No one is in touch with like their ancestral roots or like their primal roots. Like, it's just so easy if you're hungry to go to McDonald's and get freaking a bunch of things of food for like a cheap amount. When like if you really wanted to eat healthy, it would take you a while. It would cost you more money, and it would take you a while to make that food and prepare that food. And that's just one example of like another distraction and another thing to lower the vibration. Like Netflix.
It's just we're constantly distracted with social media, food. We try and flood our brains with dopamine from sources that are external rather than getting dopamine from within, right? We're getting dopamine.
Yeah, we talked about that last time too.
Yeah, we're getting dopamine from, I think I posted a TikTok about it, we're getting dopamine from alcohol, drug use, the internet, social media, like, and that, or you could find natural dopamine by doing fun things, getting a hobby. You could paint, you could do music, you could go skiing, surfing, hiking, blah blah blah, anything outside, creation.
That's why we got the guitars. We're in the studio. We're cooking up in the studio. we got the guitars. We're infinitely creating, and that we've talked about. That is all God is just creating and being present in the moment, doing that creation.
And let's bring God into aliens, because think about it like this: If God created the world in 7 days, did he just create it and sit back and watch it like a TV show for the rest of existence? Is God sitting back eating popcorn up in the clouds? Like, no.
Maybe.
No. I think that he would have to be infinitely creating, because everything is a consciousness with a creative nature behind it.
Maybe he made this earth in 7 days, but maybe he's made the thousands and thousands, not even thousands, millions and billions of planets in 7 days. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like every planet, maybe it took him 7 days to make every planet, but that's still.
But if he's existed for all eternity, what is 7 days?
Exactly.
What is 7 days? What is time? Because we create
it's just
time.
A blink.
We create it. We create it. But God, in an external sense, looking at God across the galaxy, why would he stop at Earth? What other ideas have we had as humans for extraterrestrial life? Look at all these movies that are getting put out, and you see all these different portrayals of extraterrestrial life. Do you think that God said, oh, humans are good enough? No, he's infinitely creating all different forms of consciousness, all different forms, or meat suits, bodies, different forms of himself, and just throwing them into the universe, the multiverse.
Yeah, if you even ask, like, how do we know what those aliens look like, bro? Like, you see in, like, say Avengers, for example, like, there's always like, in the very first Avengers, there's the aliens that come down, like Loki's aliens. Like, if you ask me, those are pretty good, accurate representations of what I would think an alien would look like.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, you're telling me we're just creating that from the figment of our imagination. And there's been nothing throughout the history of time up until now that would prove to be like aliens. Like, the government doesn't know what they look like. I think that's a bunch of crap. And there's been stuff, like, you could watch I forget what it's called, the UFON Files on Netflix or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's tons of shows like this. But how in, like, 1930s or whatever, I forget the dates, President Eisenhower went missing for, like, 3 days. And, like, they say, like, when he went, like, completely off grid for, like, 3 days, and, like, then that was when he had the very first meeting with, like, an extraterrestrial, and made, like, the pact of, like, we will give you knowledge for, like, intelligence, and, like, how the aliens are researching us and how we do things, and we're also taking their research.
Yeah.
And, like, it's that deal that you don't know about.
Their infatuation with us is our analytical thinking mind. And we as humans, think about it, we have thumbs. They talk about this in the Law of One, where the opposable thumbs is what really drove humans to create tools and be ingenuitive and create machinery and all this type of stuff. And also violence. Mm-hmm. But
because you can't really make a good. You can't.
What are you doing with 4 fingers? You're raking. You're
just
gardening.
Like this, bro. But you add this. Like, you know what I mean?
You break your hand if you don't have a thumb.
Exactly.
To hold it there.
Or, like, that's what they said in the Law of One about Mars. Like, Mars is the planet of war. They're the first planet to develop the opposable thumb, right? And they made weaponry and tools and stuff, like Corey said. And because what do you need? You need a friggin' thumb to hold a gun, right?
You need a thumb to really swing a knife and not have it fall out of your hand.
Like, and that's why they were in that planet. They destroyed themselves.
It was the first experiment, I guess, because they talk about the logos, the sun being the provider for the life, and the sun essentially chooses or influences the other planets, which are also beings, souls.
The sun being the sky daddy you probably think about.
And they provide the blueprint for life. So the blueprint was to advance life into 5 fingers with an opposable thumb.
And then we talk in the same thing in the Law of One. It talks about the Venetians, or like the social memory complex known as Ra, who comes from Venus, who they didn't have thumbs and they only had 4 fingers. And they were like, I believe the first planet to harvest themselves into the 4th density.
In our solar system.
In our solar system, yes. They harvested from the 3rd density. Their collective consciousness harvested from the 3rd density to the 4th density because they knew love so fast because they couldn't do any harm to anything because they simply didn't have thumbs. That's a pretty crazy concept.
Mm-hmm. Because you'd be gardening, you're going to be showing love with these thumbs when you're not building tools. And also think about, if you don't have tools, you don't have distractions. So you also, without these tools, you literally, all you have is the environment around you with plants and fruit, and you have a lot more time for self-reflection and
that's not to say you can't do much with these, but you really can't. If I cut your thumbs off today, You can't.
You've ever seen the experiment when they duct tape people's thumbs to their hand and they see how long they can live for? It's not the same, but...
How am I going to type on my phone if I don't got thumbs, man? You gotta hold it like this. Do it one by one.
It'll be whack.
Whack.
It'll be whack.
It's blown out. We need thumbs. But thumbs are a distraction, and so is all this stuff in the news. The UFOs, in the them talking about it in Congress. Things like, if you ever heard, you could look up in the... I'm pretty it's declassified CIA, Project Bluebeam, the idea that they want to fake an alien invasion in order to ensue the one world government. Because if you think about it, the only problems that are in the world right now are between different countries not agreeing on policy and stuff like that. But when you have a threat that is from out of this world, that is the only thing that would essentially make us band together.
Mm-hmm.
And by ensuing this Project Bluebeam, like fake alien invasion, we would be forced to look at each other as one world and operate as one world government. And there's also the good and the bad to that, because that would help the collective in a sense, but by helping the collective in that sense, they would also have that much more control. Aliens that are of higher consciousness come from a different plane of existence or a different frequency, right? Or that they're higher vibration than we are in this third dimension. So for example, Nikola Tesla says all things are energy, frequency, and vibrations. It would be like, and this is what David Icke says, it's a good example to understand it. It would be like we're tuned into a radio station, say 101.5. Those aliens are operating in a higher frequency or higher vibration. Say that radio station is called 94.3. And that doesn't mean that 94.3 isn't going on. It's not playing music just because we're listening to 101.5. It's like we're just not tuned into that frequency or that vibration. And when they're vibrating higher than we are, they're at a higher plane of existence, say the fourth density, fifth density, so on, up and above the scale. We're just like, we just can't physically see them. And when I say they're vibrating higher, those beings have light bodies, because we're all made up of light. So in the third density, we're really dense. This is our carbon body, like we're really dense because we're not susceptible to light because our vibrations aren't high. That's the whole goal, is to raise your vibration to to get that light.
Because you can perceive those higher dimensional realities when you raise your vibration. When you're matching the frequency of something else, that's how you tune into it, right? You think about a radio, you think about a television. Oh, I'm going to turn on channel 96. What's playing on there? It's, if you can, okay, so say we're tuned at 10 right now, right? Say we're tuned at 10, and that's a low frequency. Oh, we want to get up to channel 100, and all these different practices that we do and talk about, and mindfulness and focusing on consciousness help you elevate that so that you may experience that and reality of channel 100.
And the way to do that is, like we said, is the pineal gland or the third eye, which connects us to those higher levels of consciousness, or those higher densities rather, or even it could even connect us to the lower densities. We could talk about how shamans and people like Native Americans and yogis and monks and stuff, they could project their consciousness into a lower vibrational animal or something and then control it. And that same thing could be said for the aliens, who can project their consciousness into us and use it for a positive or negative and make us do things that we might not have control over. Mm-hmm. We talked about Matthias de Stefano, who was doing a healing ceremony in a druid temple in Scotland, and the wizard Merlin's consciousness came over him and helped him to enlight a bowl of herbs to help them heal, the sage and stuff. And all Matthias, he didn't have a lighter, but he didn't know how to light it, but his consciousness was partially taken over by Merlin, and Merlin just said, and light, and spoke through Matthias, and it lit on fire.
And that's the same principle as that law of one stuff. When Carla gets her body taken over by Ra, and she kind of blacks out, and she's obviously not in her body for that ceremony, but it's the same principle of higher. If you're operating at a higher frequency, you can then experience that of a lower frequency, and that's in a much more physical sense in those two instances. But even if you're at a higher frequency, you can walk through the forest and be the tree, like we talked about. Like, you can walk through the forest and really see the aura of the trees, even see the aura of the person walking next to you, and you start to see things as beings, as souls, rather than just separate from yourself, a physical thing.
Definitely. And if you do that, that is experiencing the infinite all, because you're only able to experience that if you're like so connected to everyone else that is a manifestation of yourself and so singular. You can't experience that from a state of separateness. So if you want to experience the all-knowing and oneness consciousness, we have to stop looking at these distractions and look in here and tap into the alien in here and look at those UFOs that the Congress is talking about and see that as a good thing, not a national security threat. It's not a national security threat. If they wanted to do something, they would have already done it and destroyed the earth. But it's not true. It's all fugazi. It's all distraction.
Think about if we were in space, right? And how long would it take our civilization to become intergalactic, interplanetary, right? Think about that technological path of evolution, and I think about what we're going, about that exponential rate of growth that we're seeing right now. Think about if we had 1 million more years, where would we be? Where, like,
I think it would look like Back to the Future.
Exactly.
Or the Jetsons.
Yeah, like,
Probably
but think about if you followed a million year. Think about if we as humans followed a 1 million year evolutionary path biologically, spiritually, rather than allowing technology to be the evolutionary factor for us. If we put the emphasis on self, on consciousness, to our own evolution, where would we be? And I think that's like Ra we talk about in the Law of One. That's that principle of how that focus on the self rather than technology can really kickstart a whole civilization forward.
Yeah, like, just real quick, we gotta wrap this up, but like, for example, the reptilians polarize themselves to service to self, so like, they're operating in service to self and like manipulating us before, and then there's like the Greys who polarize using like technology and stuff, and like the Greys aren't as conscious as we are because the only reason they raised their consciousness was through the help of technology, and they didn't do it from the power with it, the technology within. So like now they can be manipulated by us or other higher entities.
Well, even that we see,
you know what I mean?
The reason we see those, and we've talked about it, I believe, the reason we see the Greys a lot as depicted with UFOs is because the Greys were the ones that were abducting humans, and all through the 60s and early in 1800s.
Still to this day.
Still to this day, but not as frequently now with phones and the social media, internet. But those abductions done were so that they could investigate and look at humans biologically and figure out their reproductive kind of organs and such, so that they would be able to reproduce themselves.
Yep, they lost. We could get into that another day and really get deep into that stuff too. Because we're talking about the aliens today and like surface level knowledge and how it's all like distractions or how it could be used as distractions, when this stuff really does go deep. And there's a lot of notable people who have done research and discussed this. There's a lot of government documents explaining all this stuff too. So we will get into that one day.
We will get into it because there is an infinite amount of knowledge available to us in the cosmos, and the internet is not quite infinite, but it's close to it.
It is close to it. And you know it's not infinite, bro.
It's this podcast.
Time on this podcast. So thanks for watching episode 22, 5D Warrior Podcast. We will be back within the next week with episode 23. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
As always, thank you. Oh, we gotta call someone out.
Alright.
We'll call out Congress. Stop trying to say aliens are a national security threat. I can't wait to meet a Gray, bro. Can't wait to meet
I'll be skipping through Central Park.
Yeah.
With my little gray alien.
Maybe, come on, bro.
I want an alien for Christmas.
Stop it.
I want an alien this year. Peace out. Thank you, guys.